Hey, Cub fans! Thanks for joining us here on Cubs 24/7, where Randy talks Cubs. We're going to talk former Cub Ken Hubbs today. And before I get into the story of Ken Hubbs, I want to ask you guys this. If you know of somebody or actually saw Ken Hubbs play yourself in person, or you have any kind of maybe a firsthand account of somebody who saw him play, did something, do me a favor and put those in the comments. It's important to me that I get some information on Ken Hubbs before really it's kind of too late. And I think we're running out of time. So those of you who know the Ken Hubbs story know why I'm asking that. Those of you who don't, I'll tell you the story of Ken Hubbs. But I think it's important that all Cub fans are aware of Ken's story. So let's kick back. Kenneth Douglas Hubbs, born December 23rd, 1941. He was 6'2", 175, right-hander, righty. Born in Riverside, California, lived in Colton, California, and he had 4 brothers. Just a few months old, in the spring of 42, he had a ruptured hernia, and he had to wear what they call a truss until he was about 5 years old. The doctor said he would never be right and would never be able to do the things other kids did. Well, Ken proved him wrong pretty quickly. In 1954, he played in the Little League World Series, and on that team, they made it all the way to the final game. And Ken was tough. He had broken a toe playing in the backyard. He stepped in a hole and broke his toe. So he played in that Little League World Series with a broken toe, and some of the eyewitnesses described how he would hobble around the bases after hitting a home run. He went to Colton High School, and he was a 4-sport athlete. He was a superstar in 3 of those being football, basketball, and baseball. But the 4th sport was track. He was a really good high jumper. And we're going to talk football and basketball for a little bit. He was all Southern section 2 years in a row each. And he was recruited by Notre Dame to play quarterback. He was also recruited by the John Wooden coached UCLA Bruins. He was just a tremendous athlete. He actually broke his foot prior to a high school football game, and he got a pair of size 14 shoes so that he could get his cast in his shoe, and he played a football game with a broken foot in a cast. His football coach said that he was the best football player he had ever coached, and his basketball coach called him the best all-around player he had ever seen. So Ken Hubbs was a tremendous all-around athlete. Ken decided to forego a football and basketball career, and he signed with the Cubs. The scout was Gene Handley, signed him prior to the 1959 season for $50,000 signing bonus. Once Ken was signed, he played for the Morristown Cubs of what was back in that time the Class D Appalachian League. He played in 59 games, had 198 at-bats. He hit .298 with 50 RBIs and 8 home runs. Baseball initiated a player draft in 1959, and the talk was they did that to sort of control player bonuses. So they initiated the player draft in 1959, and in an effort to protect Ken from that draft, the Cubs' AAA affiliate, the Fort Worth Cats, recalled Hubbs, purchased his contract to protect him, sort of like probably a Rule 5 draft protection scenario. In 1960, in rookie camp, he played shortstop. Ken was a shortstop all the way through from Little League on. But when he got to rookie camp in 1960, they moved him to second base because there was a shortstop in the Cubs organization named Ernie Banks. So that necessitated them to move Ken to the other side of the diamond. He spent that year in 1960, 18 years old, with Cubs coach Bobby Adams, who worked tirelessly with Hobbs on second base drills, footwork, and the like. A 19-year-old Ken Hubbs played Double-A for the Wenatchee Chiefs. He played 138 games, hit .286, 9 home runs and 68 RBIs, 20 doubles, 6 triples, 9 stolen bases. And in that 138 games, he only committed 8 errors all season. The Cubs called him up in September, and it's kind of interesting because some Cub names, there's some Cub folklore here. They called him up in September of '61. Well, Don Zimmer was an all-star second baseman at the time, and there was another Cubs second baseman named Jerry Kendall who had played all the games at second base. He made his debut on September 10th versus the Phillies. In that game, he had 3 at-bats, had 2 hits, an RBI, and interestingly enough, that was the same day that Lou Brock made his major league debut, the same day Ken Hubbs did. In that season, he played in just 10 games, went 5 for 26 with a home run. He was 19 years old. Prior to the '62 season, the Mets drafted Don Zimmer in what they refer to as the expansion draft. So the '62 Mets, that's when they started. They were an expansion team. They had an expansion draft. So they took Don Zimmer. The Cubs then traded Kendall to sort of make way for Ken Hubbs as their second baseman. So 1962, 20-year-old Ken Hubbs is the starting second baseman for the Chicago Cubs. That Cubs team in 1962 finished in 9th place. Hubbs played in 160 games, hit .260 with 172 hits, 5 home runs, 49 RBIs. He led all rookies in games, hits, doubles, triples, runs, batting average. And on April 17th, he actually went 5 for 5 with 2 home runs versus the Pirates. Pirates manager at the time, Danny Murtaugh, was quoted as saying, "We better learn how to pitch to this guy. He's going to be around here for a long time." About partway through that '62 season, Cubs owner Phil Wrigley called him into his office. He tore up the contract that Ken had to double his salary. At the end of the '62 season, he was named Rookie of the Year. He got 19 of the 20 possible votes. Billy Williams had won the Rookie of the Year in the prior year in '61. Jerome Walton was the next Cub to win the Rookie of the Year award in 1989. He also won the Gold Glove in 1962. So Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove winner, 1962 as a 20-year-old. He set Major League records with 78 consecutive games and 418 chances without an error. His glove from the 1962 season is on display in Cooperstown. In the 1963 season, Ken played 155 games, hit .235, 8 home runs, 47 RBIs, played excellent defense, and he was instrumental in the Cubs' improvement over the prior year. Cubs finished over 500 at 82 and 80. Ken Hubbs was 21 years old. Hubbs decided to face his fears of flying by getting his pilot's license, and he did that. He worked on that in the winters prior, and he received his license in January 1964. On February 12th, Hubbs flew from California to Provo, Utah, with his friend Denny Doyle. They wanted to surprise Denny's wife, who had just had their first child recently. That night, Hubbs played in a charity basketball game that was sponsored by Brigham Young University. The morning of February 13th, 1964, there was a snowstorm developing, and Hubbs attempted to beat the storm. He and Doyle took off from the Provo airport, heading for Colton, California. Ken's father, Euless Hubbs, reported that they had not arrived. The wreckage was found a quarter of a mile south of Bird Island in Utah Lake. Both Hubbs and Doyle died in the crash. The funeral was held in Colton. The funeral procession was 2 miles long. Ron Santo, Ernie Banks, Glenn Hobby, and Don Elston were 4 of the 5 or the 6 pallbearers. Ron Santo had visited Ken 2 days prior to the crash and had gone up in his plane with him. Don Elston was quoted as saying, "Kenny would have been one of the all-time greats." It makes me think that a lot of things would have been different. This was, we're talking 1964, potential Hall of Fame Gold Glove type second baseman in that run in 69. 69 might have looked a little bit different as well. But the thing that stands out to me personally is, and I may have said this in some previous videos, but one of the things that's in my mind and the way I describe how long I've been a Cub fan is this phrase. And it's very simple. It's Sano, Kessinger, Beckert, Banks. Because at my age, that's the first infield that I remember. So Sano, Kessinger at short, Beckert at second, and Banks was at first. So my first memory of Ernie Banks, he had already moved from shortstop to first base. So if this hadn't happened, that all would have changed. It would have been Sano, Kessinger, Hubbs, and Banks. It's a story that I don't think a lot of Cub fans know because of how long it's been. I wanted to put this up to get a record of it, and that's why I'm looking for anybody who's got anything to add to this story. Please put it in the comments. It'll be here. We're running out of time for people who have seen him play, and I'm hoping we can find a few. So, guys, that's the story of Ken Hubbs. Thanks for joining us here on Cubs 24/7, where Randy talks Cubs, and we'll see you soon. Go Cubs, go.